One of the large questions that confronts the world today is not how people will live with each other in peace. It's about whether we can live in peace with nature. This is especially striking because the countries of the world, even when they agree on that, don't agree quite on how to get there. Developing countries, largely in Africa, Asia, Latin America, believe that the industrialized West are the ones who first polluted the planet. They should pay to clean up the mess. The developed, on the other hand, argue that if you looked at it per capita, if China, India, Brazil, South Africa were to live as well as the United States, we'd need not one, but 2, 3, or 4 planets. There seems no easy answer to this. One of the points, of course, is that we're not talking only about equality between nations or equality between people. We are changing the terms. We're asking, can we be equal with future generations? Can we live in a world of equality with other species? Now, I know that you or I would not want equality to extend to very deadly creatures. The smallpox virus, happily extinct. The AIDS virus, not so extinct. The Anopheles mosquito, flourishing where it shouldn't be. But if one were to step back and ask a different question, is the issue of the environment one of ethics and not just one of economics? It's very clear that this is not an issue that can be left only to scientists. It's an issue that concerns anyone who breathes or lives on the planet. I think this became evident in the 1940s when humans managed, the United States and Los Alamos, to test a nuclear device. The very great author Jonathan Schell famously said that we were not only looking at the question of the fate of the earth once we released the genie in the atom. We were looking not only at the possibility of the death of life, we were confronted for the first time in our history with the death of death. Because where there is no life, there can be no death. And it's interesting that it's in the years after the Second World War, when people were living through something which we today call the Great Acceleration, a huge expansion of human numbers, a huge expansion of wealth creation. More wealth was created between 45 and 1973 than in the previous thousands of years put together. More energy was used, more materials were consumed, more waste was generated. It was at this time that people became much more aware that nature consists of many interconnected cycles. So the abolition of nuclear weapons, within 10 years, people were talking about something equally deadly. The fact that strontium-90, caesium-37, which they released by tests in the atmosphere and ocean, they were lodged in the bone marrow of every child, man and woman on earth. India's Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru was one of those who took on these issues of scientists, and the signing of the Test Ban Treaty, which put an end to tests in the atmosphere and the ocean, was a very important step for the environmental future of the world. Just around 10 years later, 1972, there was a very important conference. It was held in a very beautiful European city, one which was spared several bombing raids of the World War, Stockholm. There were only 2 heads of government or state at Stockholm. One was the Prime Minister of Sweden, Olof Palme, but he had to be there because he was the Prime Minister of Sweden. The other was the Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi. At that time, one of only 3 women in the world who headed a government. And there, I think she spelled out something very significant. She said, we do need to save the environment, but poverty is the greatest polluter. You can't have people protecting a forest if their own life hangs on a thread and they're struggling for livelihood. So how do we make progress in the battle against poverty, in the struggle to ensure that all people live with dignity, without despoiling nature? That, in a sense, sets the template for where most people on earth find themselves. What do you do if you live in a country where there are 1 billion people? Growth is a must, equality is a quest, but how do you make spaces for living in peace with nature? That's the dilemma we're confronted in. And happy to say, it's not only a tale of despoilation, neglect, pollution. There are also success stories. Can we learn from them? Can we try in the coming century for a peace with nature?